Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards, parenting coach, journalist, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician and mother of 3 teenagers, 2 of them are twins.
Now, Susie, we've all experienced FOMO.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would you describe the feeling? Can you think?
That's a good question. Awful. It's horrible. It can be kind of like a gut-wrenching,
Yes.
I'm not there.
Yes. So it's kind of jealousy and loneliness, isolate. It can be all sorts of things, can't it?
And being left out.
Yes, and hating your life in that sort of moment of feeling it.
Shame.
Yes,
shame. As well, because you feel like you weren't good enough to be part of this, whatever it was. It's horrid.
Yes, and you just feel like you missed out on something significantly important. And also the sort of other people are living lives that are more fun and better, right? So my daughter experienced a curious form of FOMO recently, which I'll come on to later, and I'll explain how I dealt with it. But it's the same sort of thing that teens complain of most often when they're begging for a phone, right? That kind of, I'm missing out.
Yes.
So it comes up a lot, and some of it's more... So that's a reality of missing out if they haven't got a phone. But is it always something that we should be paying attention to, and how do we manage it?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have answers, but we'll talk about it anyway.
Good discussion.
Yeah, it's a very real pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We had a very painful email from the loveliest lady who says her daughter, who's one of 3, worked super hard age 11, and her parents were delighted, so they applied for her to go to what they call a posh school. But the thing is, they can't actually afford it. And 2 years on, the girl stopped working. She wants a Hermes bag and face products and is saying she wants to marry a rich man. And they're just going to have to pull their daughter out because they can't afford it. And also, it's not really, the values that she's exhibiting now aren't quite what they want. As parents, we want to send our kids to the best schools, but they need an education. That's the need. But the desire is to send them to like what's perceived as the best school. Well, what is that? Right.
But you can also have FOMO for, if you're a teenager and you want to be doing something reckless and crazy, you can have FOMO for, the FOMO is the feeling, isn't it?
It's the feeling.
The actual missing out depends on the context.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go into in more detail, what do you have for us as a nugget this week?
Well, my nugget is I have 2 who've just left their school. So they're going to sixth form college in September. They've still got their GCSEs starting this week. Yay.
Mine too.
Their public exams. It's fun, isn't it? But they've had their final day of school on Friday. And it just made me think of... I think we do this anyway, but it was a really nice reminder of celebrating our kids.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything that parents were invited to or anything, but they celebrated each other. Like they both made shirts and got them signed, and they came home really excited and like, look who signed it. And it was just really lovely. And this idea of celebrating our kids for who they are. Yeah. Not what they do, but who they are.
Critical.
It just seemed to be really a theme. It was really beautiful and just a good reminder of celebrating. They're amazing. They don't have to do anything to be amazing. They just are amazing. And they celebrate each other as well. They don't care about these exams in that respect with each other, but they just like each other. It's just really beautiful.
I love that. And it's funny you mentioned GCSEs because that's actually what mine's about. But mine's a curious one because 2 comments were made this week by my 2 separate daughters. One of them did her GCSEs last year. She said to me, I still miss doing GCSEs.
Wow.
And she said that because she really enjoyed the breadth of study. Ooh. And she's narrowed down. Yeah. She absolutely loves her subjects, but it was hard for her. And she did have she could have done the International Baccalaureate, but she decided not to. And she's glad she didn't. But I'm just putting that in there. That's a curious viewpoint because we don't hear that.
Ever heard that before?
No. But the other one who's doing them now and is finding it hard because it is hard, actually said to me, I'm now enjoying it. I'm enjoying the need to sit down and really focus. I feel better about myself. I like that structure, and I want to continue studying over summer rather than just let it off, because I've realized I really enjoy this.
Wow, amazing.
How weird is that? What's wrong with these children?
That's amazing. No, do you know, one of my kids is, they're very different approaching their exams, but he did mention that, you know, he's really got his head down, which is amazing. And not in a stressful way, but just, you know, putting in a few shifts here and there. And he said he's enjoying it. He's enjoying learning, and he feels that if he hadn't got to do exams, he wouldn't really get to the bottom of these subjects. And some of them he would be fine with not doing that. But for some of them, he kind of sees the value in it. And he had to correct me on a few things of, you know, no, actually, Mum, this is okay. I don't mind it. He does mind it as well. But, you know, so it's a double-edged sword.
But this is a really important point, because I do agree with everybody who complains about the GCSEs and the way that they're structured. But here's the thing. So Angela Duckworth, who's renowned for her TED Talk on grit, actually, she's a professor, and she decided to introduce to her course a section where they were either pass or fail. They weren't graded. And her supervisor said, that's a really terrible idea. But she did it anyway, because she wanted them to have intrinsic motivation. Guess what happened? They didn't really work. And then she thought, it's because they focused on the other courses where they were being graded. So they, you know, they weren't actually paying attention to this course. But then she found a study where that had been done, where all the courses didn't have grading, and they really didn't work.
Interesting.
It's interesting. So she said it made her realize that we think intrinsic motivation will work, but actually, and my daughter straight away went, well, that was a stupid idea. Interesting, hey? And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I was forced into a corner and made to work in order to pass exams. No one made me, but I knew that if I didn't pass these exams, my life would be different. So
it does work though, doesn't it? I mean, I don't completely agree with that, but maybe that's a discussion for another day.
It's a different discussion, and it's about, you know, obviously the nature of the exams, whether it's healthy, all those things. But I'm just putting a different slant on it, because for some people it
has different. My son's made me think, but I do think there is a natural hunger to learn. But how do we channel that? That's a topic for another day.
So review. You have a review.
I do. This is from Gemma. I wish I had discovered you before my child turned teenager. I was not prepared for what was coming, and I'm upset that, with hindsight, I mismanaged some early situations at the time. It's incredibly helpful to hear that they need us as a bucket to pour all their emotions into, and not necessarily to fix things. I also love the analogy of teens being in lifeboats at sea while we are on the shore, watching and available to help if they need us. I find the episodes calming and supportive, even though many of the hurdles have not arisen. It's nice to know that there is somewhere to go for research and tips should they arise. Well done for creating this hug for parents like me that didn't know they needed one. Oh, what a beautiful review.
Isn't that lovely? Oh,
so beautiful.
I love these reviews, and I love it when you give us detail for the things that really land. But also, Gemma, I'm still mismanaging things.
Yeah. Every single day.
And I mentioned that on social media, and everyone was going, no, we all are. So give yourself a break. It's nice to know that you've got some support and that you're not alone, but we're all, it's hard.
And I definitely forget to put the dinghy in the lifeboat and
all that
stuff some days. So yeah.
Yeah, give yourself a break. So coming back to FOMO, we know when we think we could be missing out on information, events, experiences, or life decisions, that this can happen, this FOMO, this emotional response which can feel life-threatening.
Yeah,
it can feel very big, can't it?
Yeah, I think for our teens, it's generally or mainly probably social events, isn't it?
Yes.
Not going to social events, whereas maybe for us it's a bit more nuanced. I don't know that. I'm just spouting from my hip here, but I imagine it's more social things that they really get affected by. That is proper FOMO, isn't it? I want to be there and I haven't been invited.
Yes. And it's not really ever about what we need. It's about what we desire, isn't it? And the French philosopher René Girard is very helpful here. He says, desire is always for something we feel we lack.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come from inside us. Our desires are mimetic, so we copy the people around us. And to quote him, he says, man is a creature who does not know what to desire. He turns to others in order to make up his mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. Interesting take.
Interesting. I'm just mulling that one over. I mean, I guess that applies to more concrete stuff, doesn't it? And status. But like inner peace, that's an inside job, surely. And a desire for that would be inside. I don't know. Mulling.
Yeah. I think what his point is that human beings are, we copy so much, even things like accents. If you spend a lot of time with somebody, you'll start to blend your accent with theirs. We mimic each other around us, and we look around us for social cues for what's important. And mostly the people we imitated, those we believe to be higher up the ladder.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely do that. I'm just wondering if that's the only thing.
And the problem with this imitating somebody, so looking and thinking, oh, who's higher than us? I want to be a bit more like them.
Yeah.
Is that we often don't think about whether the ladder we're climbing is actually leaning on the wrong wall. Right?
Yeah, because we can desire somebody who, like, if we're stressing around like headless chickens, thinking we need all this stuff and doing all this stuff, and we look across the water and see somebody who's very chilled out, has less, and is having a much nicer time, we can definitely have FOMO for that as well. It doesn't always have to go that way, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So it depends on our values, doesn't it? We have to know what they are first.
It does depend on your values, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think with teenagers in particular, though, what happens is they go into school. It's very, very pronounced, I think, when they first go to senior school, because there is a jostling for hierarchy.
Yes, yeah.
There is like who's the top, they'll be looking around to see who the strong people are. And there's a lot of desire to form an identity. And where do you get your identity? Like, how do you decide what your identity is? And that's how you end up with this uniform of everybody wearing the same things, because they want to all fit in. That, it's I think it's most strong with teenagers, and I think it's because they're living in such close proximity to each other, because that's part of the other thing.
Yeah, that's why I kind of think it's mostly to do with their social identity, isn't it? And their social capital and fear actually missing out on something social, whereas for us it's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And what's interesting with Girard is he identified two types of this kind of desire and people we learn from. And he said there's I called it the distant. And these are people who can affect our desires, but we can't affect them. So in other words, they're too far away from us. The barrier can be death, status, money, time, like history. So you look at historical figures and you think, oh, that was an amazing person, or whatever it is.
Rose tinted glasses come on there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. But I mean, but, you think about people who, I know a man who was so taken by the works of Winston Churchill that it changed his life.
Yes.
And he grew up in abject poverty and then created an entire company around what he'd learned from Churchill.
Yes.
Right. So this is the thing. It can really, really influence us to do very, very positive things. But the difference with that is you're not directly competing with those people. So those models can be really positive because they'll raise us up. They don't threaten our status.
And I guess that's inspiration, isn't it? And inspiration and FOMO aren't the same things.
No, they're not at all. And we can still continue to question our values rather than just follow those things. The problem is the close people. And those people can be too close for comfort. So they could be your friends at school, your partner, immediate family members, I don't know, friends you hang out with, people you work with. And you're brushing up against them on a daily basis. Now, hopefully we don't constantly feel competitive. That's a horrible state to be in anyway. But for example, my husband said when we were first dating, he said, I could never have actually dated somebody who was doing the same job as me because I'm very competitive.
Right.
And it wouldn't have worked.
No, we do have a thing called comparisonitis, and I think most of us fall into that if we're not super aware around it. And teenagers particularly, it's comparisonitis times 100.
Yes. and we'll come on to why I think it's so big for teenagers, apart from just this proximity. So there's, the problem is there's no barrier to competition when they're young, because you're all still just kind of forming who you are. And what's interesting about this category, of course, is we can affect the other people as much as they can affect us. I mean, if they're higher up the ladder, they'll be less affected by what we do, but they're still affected. If you're in a group. So, for example, I didn't buy my kids iPhones when they were young, partly because I didn't want them using phones, but also because I looked around me and I didn't want to be the person who put that into the social group.
Yeah.
Because whoever breaks first is then going to have an impact on the entire group.
Yeah. I mean, we all do it, don't we? And the more the more grounded and accepting of ourselves we feel, the less we need to compare. And teenagers are finding out who they are. But it still exists, doesn't it? You know, there are teenagers who are really clear on who they are. They know what their values are. They ooze this kind of inner confidence, and they don't care what other people think. Maybe they do a little bit, but they're much less affected. Comparisonitis really hits the people who don't know who they are, and there's no judgment here. I think I was like that as a teen. You know, I was really looking over my shoulder, didn't really know who I was. Oh, they're doing that. I'll try and be like them. I'll try and do that.
Yes.
And my I was trying to, you know, I was comparing all the time, which is a exhausting place to be.
It's exhausting. It can create perpetual anxiety, envy, frustration. You know, it really is hard work to live like that. And in fact, I've had my girls say, oh, you know, it's exhausting when I'm at school, because, I mean, less so now because they've really become much more formed as characters. But when they first started out, it's just absolutely exhausting having to try and be somebody because you're constantly looking around.
And the more they can feel that they're okay with who they are, which takes most of us a whole lifetime.
Exactly.
The better, and the less they'll get FOMO, and the less they'll compare themselves.
Yeah, and it's that you've absolutely nailed that. And just before we move on to that particular thing that's underpinning all of this, guess what? Marketing companies and the social media operations, they all know this. They know. They do, and they want us to be as close to a perpetual state of FOMO as possible. Why? Because it makes us constantly check back, and we buy stuff. Yeah. So, for example, I mean, even just the other day, I was looking at something, and they ask these questions. You go, oh yeah, I'll answer that question, and then what they've got, they're trying to loop you into something where you get to the end, and they'll say, you've got 10 minutes, and it's half price at the moment, and you just think, oh, piss off.
I'm just thinking of IKEA adverts. I always feel really left out when I look at them. Yeah, or I used to. I haven't seen them for ages. I don't really watch telly at the moment. But IKEA and was it Coca-Cola? They do some really good, like, big fun parties where everyone's having such a great time, and you sit there going, I sit there going, oh, I really want to be there. Oh, maybe if I get an IKEA sofa, then that.
Yeah, and then I'll feel like I am part of, and that's exactly what happens, because we clothe ourselves with these things that make us feel like we are then living that life, and that's what they're playing on. So that's absolutely spot on. So I was reading a marketing website which was actively telling companies to create FOMO with user-generated content. So it claimed that 85% of consumers find visual user-generated content. So people that they recognize who are a bit like them or that they like, using that thing and talking about how good that thing is much more influential than brand photos.
Yeah,
people are going to buy from people.
Is made, isn't it?
Right. And people buy from people that they like, or who they'd like to be like.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yes. And so if you see people wearing things, that's why influencers are so powerful, why they're so influential. Yeah. Because they're just close enough and they're appealing enough, and people are like, oh. And I remember my sister once buying a dress from a catalogue. We used to have Littlewoods catalogues, and you'd pour through them, all these sheets of paper, and then you'd have to order them. It would be weeks until they came, and then the dress would come and it would look nothing like the woman in the photo. But you're kind of thinking, oh, well, if I buy that, I mean, there's this kind of disconnect with how it's going to work for you. But we've all done it.
Absolutely. Still do it.
Yes.
Not Littlewoods, just other stuff.
So those are the negatives. And then there was a study on social media use by the University of Glasgow in Scotland, which examined the mental health consequences of 467 high school-aged students. And I'll just pause for a second. Jonathan Haidt, who wrote Anxious Generation, the book that's going around all the time now, has extensive data on this. Yeah. It reports that teenagers significantly feel a societal pressure to constantly be available. And those constantly incoming alerts create that FOMO. So it's not just that they'll see things and think, oh, I'm not at that party. They feel like if they step away from their phone, or if they're not available, something could be happening that they miss.
They miss the chat.
And then they don't get invited to something.
And
then they're suddenly, you're
right. It's not just about the invitations. It's the actual chat and the banter and all of that. They want to be part of all of it.
Yes. So it actually creates this constant sense of anxiety about stepping away from the device so that you can actually go and do something useful with your life, which is really unfortunate. We don't want our kids feeling that.
No,
obviously, none of us do.
No, I'm just thinking with twins, one of mine's quite boundaried on that and goes, you don't have to answer. And the other one is not.
Yes.
It's interesting. They're different.
And we often have conversations because I'm constantly saying to the kids, you don't have to answer straight away. They say, if you left someone on red, it's really, so they're all constantly swiping to sideswipe to see whether they like with the message and whether they want to answer it right then. And I show them, look, I opened my friend's message 2 days later, I messaged them back. And my friends know that it's not that I didn't care, it's that I'm busy and actually I'd like to compose a proper answer, unless it's a bit of banter. But and
that's a cultural thing then,
it's a cultural thing, very much so.
Our generation functions differently with that.
Yes. And for us, we can access things, in terms of the sort of FOMO, missing out on great holidays or parties or whatever. Quite often we'll be accessing them at a time when we are vulnerable. Yeah. So you're tired, you've come home from a long day of work, you log on to social media and you see someone else has been having a wonderful holiday and you're working all the hours God sends and your kids are misbehaving. Yeah. And that's hard.
That sucks.
That sucks.
I know my kids have had FOMO when they have been, quite a lot of their holidays they've spent going to visit their dad. And that's been quite challenging for them, that they've missed stuff and they don't like missing stuff.
Of course.
And that is real FOMO. But they once you do it once, you realise you don't die.
Yes.
And then it's
love that.
But I think it's still hard. Some stuff, it depends on the event, doesn't it? Nobody likes missing the big party of the year, do they?
No.
But
and you don't know whether it's going to be that big party.
No, the one you think is going to be big is usually quite lame, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they've definitely experienced that and they've verbalised it actually.
Yeah. Yeah. But I agree with you. And I think it's something I've done for myself and I try to do with my kids, where I say, so, like with my daughter, when I put her phone in the lockbox so that she couldn't access it and it also blocked all the signals, and then at the end of the day, I say, so have a look. What have you missed? Oh, nothing actually.
Nothing much.
And I think that's a really lovely way of reinforcing that actually you don't, and you don't need to panic and you don't need to be on all the time. And my daughter yesterday said the most amazing thing, where she said, Mummy, I've realised that being mature is actually not just about creating boundaries from other people, it's boundaries within yourself. And amazing. She had been doing that, answering messages as soon as they came through, and she realised that it was just delaying, it was interrupting her thought patterns and delaying her work.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I said to her,
amazing.
A lot of 40-50-year-olds haven't
got there yet. Brilliant.
Yeah. So coming back to this lovely listener and her daughter asking for a Hermes bag, for example, she deserves a bit of compassion, because she is being influenced by the girls around her and she's being made to feel like this is what's important, because she's in an environment where they, the people who seem to be important value these things.
Yeah, it's real for her. It's social capital within that context.
And the lyrics of Olivia Rodriguez, do you listen to her at all?
Oh, yeah.
She's actually quite clever,
I
isn't
quite
she?
like her.
Yeah, I do. Jealousy. I kind of want to throw my phone across the room, because all I see are girls too good to be true, with paper white teeth and perfect bodies. Wish I didn't care. I know their beauty is not my lack, but it feels like that weight is on my back and I can't let it go. It's that last bit. I can't let it go.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to sing that, actually.
I think the rest of the listeners are probably quite grateful that I didn't.
Okay.
Have you heard me singing? No, anyway.
No, I'd like to.
I used to be able to sing. I've got a croaky voice.
That's really good lyrics, though. I mean, coming back.
They're really great. Yeah, well, they're really summing up how these girls and boys, because it will happen differently, but it's the same thing.
And it really pinpoints, doesn't it, that we can know something, we can be super aware of it, we know that it's not real, we know all of that, and yet it still affects us.
Yes. So I think the first stage, like you said, is knowing ourselves and finding value in things that matter to us. Yeah. And so we as parents can help our kids with this and ourselves. So it's the digital awareness, understanding how we're being manipulated. And the use of FOMO is really extreme now, both on social media and in terms of products being shifted. We have to be aware of this, and we have to remind ourselves regularly that that's one of the things that's pushing us to behave the way we're behaving.
And pushing social media as well, isn't
yes,
it? It's like
absolutely.
the whole way it works, that they want you to keep on the chat. Yeah, it's
and they're tapping into something that's primordial that we all fear.
Yeah.
Okay, and learning to identify this is something we can do for our kids. So when we notice that we need to notice the things they do well, and we need to notice the things that make them happy, and really emphasize those. Like, say, look, I noticed that really made you happy, when it's not a product. And we've done this when we were talking about presents, and the kids who seem like they really they don't care about the gifts that they got, and they're being entitled. And what really the research says is that it's activities and doing things that bring joy and satisfaction. So I think when they're younger, it's harder to be able to do that, just because they don't know who they are, and they don't. So I remember talking to a dad about his daughters, and I said, what have you been doing so well with them? Because they were just wonderful girls. And he said, they need a sport. They need a sport. Give your teenagers something, a sport or a thing that's their thing, because if they find a thing, then that becomes a focus, and it stops them from getting too hung up on everything else. Yeah. So I liked that point.
It's great advice, but now I'm just
very hard to do.
Lots of people panicking now that their kids don't have a thing.
No. My daughters, do they have a thing? They don't really have a thing, but what I have done slowly over the years is try to keep emphasizing you. So with one of them, I said, you need to find something you can practice 20 minutes a day. Just anything. I don't care what it is. I'm not picking it for you, but you need to find something you'll do 20 minutes a day, because that's the only way you'll be good at anything, and you'll get genuine joy.
What did they pick?
She picked the guitar.
Okay.
And the other one I don't need to do that with, because she's found Greek. She's fascinated by
Greek.
Yeah, she's found Greek, ancient Greek.
As you do.
Yes, as you do. She's absolutely obsessed.
My kids are not doing Greek, just to be really clear.
Well, no, actually, we've lost the discussion completely. Really interesting thing, and this is good for all of us parents, is our kids aren't us. We know that, and they start to find things that interest them. And I've never really understood anything much about Greek and Latin, right? Roman Empire, don't know. And because she's interested in classics, I bought a book that's written by a man called Oliver Taplin, who is one of the dons at Magdalen College. And it was written in 1990. It was to do with the Channel 4 series, to do with the ancient Greeks. And I've been reading it myself, because it's actually quite accessible. Wow.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
So interesting. And I'm learning, and then she'll say something to me, and what's happening is it's opening my entire understanding of the difference. So the Greeks were if they entertained people, they would deliver tragedies, and it would sort of philosophical thoughts on, the human condition. The Romans would
We do that every dinner time.
It was great. Yeah, but the Romans would put
Tragedies.
The Romans would put people in an amphitheatre and have them killed by animals, or vice versa, right? Very different attitude towards what's entertainment and how we live, and right? But I didn't know that. No. So my point is, when you have kids, if you kind of encourage them to find their thing, you can go along in the way.
You can go with them.
Wow, look what I'm learning now.
And you can do it even when it's something that is a bit not something you're interested in. One of my kids loves rap music. And there's loads of, and I've heard a lot of rap music, and it would never have been my go-to. It still isn't my go-to, but I've heard quite a lot. I quite like it now.
Yes.
And there's something going on at the moment. I'm not going to mention names because I'll get them all wrong, and then I'll be shot.
Is it the Drake versus?
Yes. That's like a big deal, and that's now in the news. And it wasn't before. It was built up for ages, and we were talking about it, and then suddenly it was in the BBC News, and I sent the link. I said, "Look, it's in the news,"
and I know all about it.
And I know more than you, because you're in school and you didn't hear that. But it's really fun and interesting. Yes. And he thinks I'm a bit weird for doing that, but appreciates it. It's fun.
It's amazing. And my friend did that with her son, and she said, "Oh, go on, let me listen to some." And she started listening to some. And he's really cool. He's sucking his teeth, doing the rap stuff. And she said, "Oh, you like poetry, darling. That's so sweet."
Some of the words are amazing. Yes. They really are.
Yeah. So coming back to this whole FOMO thing, and I mentioned earlier about how
we went a bit off topic.
Went off topic, and it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure, people are bored. They've switched off by now anyway. And I just, coming back to this, what I said earlier on about my daughter and how she experienced a FOMO, which was weirdly, she and I were talking about the World Health Organization report that found British children drink more alcohol than youngsters in any other country, which was pretty shocking.
Eek, that was horrid.
But she read a report in the Times actually it was kind of a think piece in the Times by a mother who said, when I was a young teenager, and we're talking young, not 18, I used to go out and get drunk with my mates in the field. It was really naughty and it was a rite of passage and we had so much fun. And I want that for my daughters. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, I feel like I've missed out. I feel like maybe I've missed something really big and important and special. And I said, gosh, that's really interesting. But what was really interesting is, and it made me feel really hurt in a way that maybe I don't know, what did I feel like? I just didn't understand why she felt that was missing out. But I did understand. Okay. So I then started unpicking it because I thought the only way I can deal with this emotion that I'm experiencing is to start literally just pulling it apart. And I said to her, the thing is, darling, I never actually said you can't go. I've discouraged you from drinking because I've informed you on all the issues with it when you're young. And the truth is, a lot of girls, if they did go out and get drunk, wouldn't have had that experience. So what she's done is she's romanticized something that actually really is a toxic thing. And it's not safe, particularly when you're young. And so if you were doing it in my own home, that would be different. If you were out in some park somewhere, I just would not think that was a particularly sensible thing to do. So we started pulling it apart. And then I said, and actually, you don't even like going out and getting drunk now. So, and she went, oh, no, actually, I don't.
So FOMO really is, that's really interesting. FOMO really is a kind of a fantasy, isn't it?
It's
It's imagining that it's going to be amazing. If only I could be there, have this, do this. It's a fantasy that it's romanticized. And it can also work in hindsight, can't it? You can have, I remember going into school on the Monday morning and kids had been doing all sorts of exciting things at the weekend and I hadn't been there. There's a sort of a FOMO with hindsight as well, isn't there?
Yes.
But that again is fantasy because I wasn't there and it sounds all amazing. But I'm sure, as you say, some of the kids there are probably having a horrible time.
And that's what we can do as parents as well, is you can help your kid rather than just, because it feels like a bit of a gut punch. If you think, oh God, what have I done? I've ruined my childhood, whatever. Actually, if you start unpicking it and you realize that woman has done something quite irresponsible, what she's done is she said, oh, I want the same for my kids. And it's been in a national newspaper. And now my daughter has looked at it and gone, oh, well, that's actually, it's had an impact on everybody else because this is a woman who's elevated to the status of writing in a national newspaper about something. And it's changed the narrative, right?
Yeah.
So that's my point. My point is, she's looked up to that and gone, oh, well, here's something really special that I've missed out on. Whereas she never thought that before.
No, and that's where we come back to values, isn't it? What is important to you? And of course, they change and shift. But, what is important to you?
Yes. Keep stressing those, keep looking at values, keep talking about that. Those are the foundation. That's the anchor.
Yeah, and it's okay to have FOMO maybe as well. Like it's just a feeling, isn't it? As the more they pass, it's being with it and unpacking it, unpicking it. What is it? And allowing it to pass, and rather than trying to never have FOMO or get rid of it for them, or make it a taboo somehow. That's not helpful
100%. And life isn't fair. So the truth is, you're going to miss out on things.
You are.
This is how, and actually, our ability to cope with that is also part of the whole process of growing up.
Oh, I love that. That's really important because we're not going to be invited to all the parties.
No,
we're not going to have everything, and
nobody's inviting me to parties.
And sitting in the suckiness of that is a really important life skill, actually.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So on that note, I think that's it.
Oh, wow. Now I have FOMO for the rest of the episode. What have we missed?
Well, actually, the truth is I am going out to a party tonight, which is a strange thing on a Tuesday night. This we're recording this on a Tuesday. Yeah. Anyway, if you enjoyed the episode.
She's done her hair and everything.
I have. It's very rare. That's it. If you enjoyed the episode, please tell at least one other person. And if you gained anything from it, please leave us a review, because it makes such a difference both to us and to the ability of other parents to find our podcast. You can find me on www.teenagersuntangled.com and email at teenagersuntangled@gmail.com. Susie is super busy, so we're super lucky to have her popping in to chat with me.
So lucky.
It's true. It's true. It's really hard to nail her down and get her in here. We can reach her. How can we reach Susie?
www.amindful-life.co.uk, and all my links are in there.
But hurry, because she won't be around for that much longer.
Oh, I like what you did there.
Could be missing out. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.